Well, label's the law. I mean, we have to follow them, and we do, and that's just the way it is. So. I'm the general manager here at the Macon MFA location. I've been here a little over almost 2 years now, and been with the company for almost 3. But previous employment, I worked for a large grower, farmed a little over 10,000 acres, and I took care of all their crop protection at that time. I had the opportunity to come to MFA and kind of show my skills, I guess.
Great, and you're a commercial applicator, correct?
Yes.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about how long you've done that and what it's like to be a commercial applicator.
Well, I've been commercial applicating now for right around 15 years. Started out as a private applicator, and then I come to commercial. When you go to do your commercial, you got to do a lot of testing to get approved, and you got to make sure we're following the labels and stuff like that.
Could you give our viewers an explanation of what it takes to get your certified applicator's license and continue in education?
Yeah, so therefore you got to do some testing. I believe it takes 2 tests. You got a general knowledge test and a plant 1A plant test, and you'll go over your insects, weeds, and crops, and actually you got to go over some label stuff too. Make sure you understand and read labels.
Can you speak to some of the agronomic and applicator training that your company does for its employees internally?
So MFA internally, they do a lot of their own trials. So they'll do, say they'll do a lot of trials on chemicals, and they'll show us what will work, what won't work, how many gallons per acre, so to speak, what's working, what's not working. They do a lot of trials, in their trial data, and they send that back to us. We go through a lot of training. I mean, just to make sure that we're doing everything right. So.
You mentioned the labels. How do you and your applicators interact or feel about the labels?
Well, label's the law. I mean, we have to follow them, and we do, and that's just the way it is. So.
What measures do you take to follow the label?
We, for one thing, we got to have the wind speed cannot be too excessive. I think a lot of labels, if you read them, 3 to 10 mile an hour, some of them, and we try to stay within them requirements. Every applicator has a wind speed meter in their machine, and we measure wind speed at our boom height. And if it's not correct, we don't spray it. And we also make sure that we're not spraying, the wind direction is not in the wrong direction. We have to make sure we're not blowing stuff any other direction. I mean, we have to stay with the label. And if we feel like we're going to have a heavy weather event one afternoon, we're liable not to even spray that day. We're just going to forget about it. We're going to see what happens, because we want to make sure that the chemical does a good job.
And you bring up a good point. I've noticed, you practice what you preach, because often days, on very windy days, if you come by this store, you notice the sprayers are sitting, even though it's right in the midst of the spray season.
Yep. No, that's just the way we got to do things. I don't want to have a drift issue. We haven't had none yet, and I don't want to go through that. It's easy way to avoid it. Just do it the right way.
Right, and you guys have local knowledge of where apiaries are.
Yes.
And sensitive grapevines and things like that.
There's a website I believe it's called Field Watch. You get on there, and anybody that's put their beehives in there, or they're put their grapevines or any kind of orchard or anything like that, if they've registered it, put it in there, that way we know we're not in a sensitive area.
We talked about the label and the label being the law, but beyond the label, could you visit with us a little bit about the spray technologies you have and use to minimize drift?
I believe that getting the right tip for the product that you're using is important, and the right pressures and boom height. I mean, boom height is very key. Make sure we're getting a proper spray pattern and minimize our drift.
Are there, I think I've heard of technologies proprietary to some of the major manufacturers that change the way the pressure is used to minimize drift near field borders and that type of thing?
Yeah, a lot of this newer technology coming out, whether it don't really matter what brand of sprayer it is now, it's coming out with a pulse width modulation. And what that does is you can dial, instead of, the old spray systems, faster you went, most generally the higher pressure you ran. And now we can dial our pressure into a certain pressure. If I want to run 40 PSI in this field, and we set it for 40 PSI, it's going to stay at 40 PSI no matter I'm running 8 mile an hour or 13 mile an hour. The pressure stays the same. And that way we can control our droplet size and make sure that we're, limiting drift issues.
Speaking about the way things used to be done and droplet size, a lot of people used to run flat fans and had a real fine mist. You've seen the trend lately in larger, coarser droplet size, and you think that's the way the industry's moving?
I do. I really do. When I told you I've been spraying for 15 years, when I started out, we had the flat fans, and you really had to watch your speed because if you didn't, the faster you went, the finer the mist or the finer the particle, and you would have drift problems. I mean, you had to slow down. It might mean creeping along at 8 mile an hour just to make sure we don't have them problems.
I wanted to ask you how much things have changed over the years, over the past 10, 15, 20 years. In terms of technology that's available now, what kinds of trends have you seen emerge, and is there room to improve on what we're doing now?
I think a lot of things have changed. We kind of done went over some. I think manufacturers of spray tips have advanced their game in the last 10 years. They're starting to improve on how to control particle or wind drift and stuff. I think there's products out there that we can add to tank mixes that can help us in those situations also. And every year they're coming out with something new, it seems like.
What about GPS and auto steer and those type of technologies? Do you see that benefiting field margins and things like waterways in terms of automatic shutoff? Yes.
About all the companies are going to, as long as, if you got John Deere, whether it's Case IH, it really don't matter. You're shutting off, like if you've got a pulse width modulation, you can get it to where it shuts off tip by tip, and we're not overlapping. And when we're making them turns around waterways, it's compensating for your boom, on the outside, it's going faster, so it's speeding up the rate out there and slowing it down on the inside. That way we're not overrating at the tip of your waterways. In the old days, I used to sit there and run my switch, try to control it so we didn't overrate it. Now that it knows where the boom's at, so it can shut the tips on and off accordingly to where it's at. So it's made a huge advancement.
I suppose that saves also in the quantity of the pesticide used in the field too.
Yes, it saves. It's accurate. You go to a field and the guy says it's 77 acres. You got 77 acres of product. There's no overlap. It's right down to the tip.
Talk to us a little bit about how you might handle a situation where you have droplets from a sprayer moving off target.
Well, personally, I can say we've never had it happen so far. And as far as that goes, if we felt like we got an issue, I'm going to contact the grower, and we're gonna start there, and we're going to try to make it right. We're going to get it figured out and see what happened.
some of the newer crop protection technologies on the market make it much more important that we know what our neighboring fields are. How has that influenced your business and the way you go about doing business and communicating?
So common practice with me is I know my growers, and I try to know my neighbors, try to figure out what technologies, what traits they're running. That way, I don't have a drift problem if it did happen. We try to minimize them issues, and I think a lot of it, you just got to get out and talk to growers. You got to figure out who's planting what and where they're putting it, and no matter if they do business with you or not, I still ask, and they're willing to tell you because they don't want no problems either.
One thing I've noticed in the way not only you but other ag retailers in the area do business is, when a customer comes in and makes a spray order, the first thing you do is get on Google Maps or some other system, and you actually map out the field so your applicators know exactly where they're supposed to be, and I think that's beneficial.
It is beneficial. I'm glad you brought that up. I got a new program that we implemented this year. It's a Ravens Ag Sync program. We dispatch every load that leaves this building, gets dispatched to the machine and the applicator. They got an iPad in their piece of equipment with the map on it. That guarantees us we never get in the wrong field. It'll show the machine sitting in that field. We don't have any problems anymore. We never did, but it's just 100% we don't have this problem, because when I send that spray order out, he knows exactly what he's spraying, what gallon per acre he's spraying, and he knows what field he's going to be in, and it's all on a map, and he can see it where he's at. So, yep, it's been a huge game changer for us.
And you mentioned you had about 32,000 acres that you guys actively work. So that sounds like a lot. How many of those growers are implementing these technologies to reduce drift?
I mean, we use it on every acre. It's not, we don't cut corners, so we just don't do it.
An ag retailer like yourself is not necessarily tied to any manufacturer. Could you just talk about maybe the breakdown of products you use and some of the ones you see benefits with, like corn and soybeans?
We do use a lot of various companies, Syngenta, FMC, BASF, Corteva. We use across the board. We do see certain chemicals that seem to do a lot better job in my eyes, and Acron Flexi, I will admit, is probably one of our top corn products. Whether we're doing a 1-pass or a 2-pass program with it, at the end of the day, I can almost guarantee you we're going to have a clean field. So we got it's got some products in there that I think it's key, is the bicyclopyron that nobody else has, and I think that product there it really helps to hold the weeds off, and you can see it.
And one other thing that touches on the products, but also weed resistance management, is, a lot of these new technologies are post-applied. How important do you feel a pre-emerge program is, especially in beans, where you're using new technologies as well?
I think, in my honest opinion, if I had to do it in the way I like to do it, I like to do a pre-emerge. I like to stop a weed. I don't even like to let it get out of the ground if I can keep from it. The easiest weed to kill is the one that never gets started. So if we can do a pre-emerge and then come back with a post, 21, 28 days later, let's get it on there. You get a lot of growers that don't see nothing in their fields and they don't want to do nothing. Next thing you know, a week later, we got a problem. If we could have got started a little earlier, we could have prevented even getting started. And we got to start doing that in the future, because if we don't, we're going to start getting resistance, and we're going to be looking for new technology, and I don't know if there's new technology down the road or not.
You make a good point, because I've talked to a lot of growers, and their feeling is that the industry, the manufacturers, are always going to come up with the next greatest thing. The reality is there's not a lot of new technologies coming down the pipe. So it's important to, save the legacy products that are still doing a good job for us. So Can you speak to that at all? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, of course, I don't work for any of these companies, but just talking to them, there's nothing coming. I've heard none of them say that there's really anything new coming out to stop water hemp. Really, we just got to start using what we got and make sure we manage it the right way. And that's and down in the future we might have something 5-10 years down the road, but right now I don't think there's, from what I'm hearing from any company, there's nothing in the future coming.
I remember when I was starting out, we did anything we could to get rid of milkweeds. And now with the recognition that pollinators are potentially threatened, to me, look to be thriving at the edges of fields. And you do see a lot of wildlife benefiting at the edge of fields.
Yeah, like on the field edges, I mean, you're still seeing your milkweeds, your shatter canes. You're still seeing these wildflowers. Exactly. You're seeing these wildflowers out there. We're not having any issues as far as wiping out a fence row or nothing. I mean, it's I just don't see no problems there.
Over the years, there's often a misperception by the public that spray applications are haphazard and not well controlled, or there's not a lot of technology brought to bear. But I think, in this interview and with your expertise, I hope we've demonstrated that all the technology and training that's utilized to keep those applications in place.
They're, I tell you what, our equipment, the GPS on it, and they got the flow meters down to exact science. If we send out 80 acres worth of product, we're spraying 80 acres. I mean, it is calibrated to the T. It's gonna do a quality job. You're not gonna miss, or you're not gonna overrun or underspray.
I heard you mention that your facilities purchased a new sprayer recently. Without divulging the exact dollar amount, could you give our viewers some idea, a ballpark range of what a brand new custom applicator rig costs?
$400 to $500.
400,000 to 500,000, so
Yeah.
nearly $500,000.
And it's a lot of technology there. With that machine, we're going to have boom height control now. That way we make sure we got our boom height across the board always where it needs to be. And we're going to have an exact apply, so therefore we're going to have the pulse width modulation with it. We're going to have all these options of shutting off tip by tip now. So we're advancing. We're wanting to advance to make sure we do a perfect job.
Another thing I want to show you guys is this monitor. See that skip right here? I'm about to spray over that. It's going to turn each individual nozzle on as needed to spray over that. No more, no less. Boom, 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 boom. There. Just caught that whole swath. Each one turned on as needed, each one turned off as needed. Absolute most efficient amount of product was used without over applicating and not saturating the ground with unnecessary amounts of chemical or wasting dollars.
I guess in your opinion and your experience, could you speak to how you feel about the importance of the environment?
They care for their ground. They want to make sure it's fertilized. They want to, they got waterways. We were talking about waterways a while ago. They're doing waterways for what reason? To stop erosion. They care. If they didn't care, they'd let the ground erode out and disappear. So they do care about stuff like that. I don't believe that one bit.
I mean, MFA has been here as long as I can remember. It's part of the community. You're part of the fabric of what keeps us together. And obviously agriculture is probably one of the largest economic sectors in this area. Any thoughts?
Well, I think we're very active in the community, scholarships, school scholarships and stuff. We try to help the kids out. And, a lot of kids do 4-H and stuff, and they're coming in here buying feed and stuff for their 4-H programs. And, but yeah, I feel like we're very community, we're part of the community here, and glad to be a part of it.